Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and you're gonna be a super spicy person after watching this video. You fire me for talking about unionizing? I'll spill all your dirty secrets. This is a bit of a long one, please bear with me to the end. I used to work for a plasma collection center back from 2008 to 2010. Even though I was a certified phlebotomist, I was placed up in reception and I slowly worked my way up to senior receptionist and trainer. I was also training for quality control and was known for keeping detailed notes of issues that were in need of fixing or training, which I would forward on to management. Some of the things I keep track of were violations of FDA and GHA, German Health Authority, since we were run by a German/Swiss company, as well as OSHA issues. Because I wasn't seeing anything being done, I eventually stopped reporting the issues to avoid being labelled a troublemaker and just kept the time, date and information, and if I could, I got pictures with date stamps just to cover my own ass in case something bad went down. Fast forward to June of 2010 and I was talking with one of my co-workers about the proposed cuts to benefits and the high turnover rate at our centre. They were complaining to me about being afraid to call in sick because others had been fired for it. And I mentioned that they were putting donors in danger by us being sick since we weren't allowed to wear face masks unless we were in the back in the donor area, and even then it was the clear face shields to prevent getting hit if someone leaked on us. Without thinking about it, I talked about how unions protected against this sort of thing in other medical fields and how that might be something we should consider to help protect us. The co-worker got weirdly quiet, but I figured it was because I was talking about a subject most people don't like talking about. Nothing really happened until about August, when another co-worker grabbed my ponytail while I was working with a donor and yanked down on it, jerking my head back. I'd informed everyone I worked with to never touch my hair because it was a trauma trigger for me being abused, and so this co-worker knew I would wind up in a panic mode from this. She'd seen it happen before when a donor touched my hair, so this was deliberate. I remember telling her not to do that again or I would make her get away. She of course walked up and yanked my hair even harder, and I hit her. The supervisors went into damage control as I fled the area, still in a panic response, and one of them cornered me and demanded I write down what happened because I had assaulted someone on the property. I wrote my side as well and told them to check security footage since the camera was aimed right at the booth I was working at and had clear view of the events. Turned out everyone else told an entirely different and creepily similar story than what I told, and the footage couldn't be found, even though less than half an hour had passed. I was fired for assault less than an hour later and escorted off the premises after being given 5 minutes to clear out my locker and get my belongings. So on to the revenge, which was two-pronged. My partner was there on that day and saw what happened and tried to offer to write up what he saw, but was denied. So the next time he went in, he wound up being screened by the co-worker who yanked my hair, who didn't even get a write-up for assaulting me. And asked her loudly enough that the whole reception area could hear, "So how's those 50 shekels of silver, Judas? Was it worth it?" Which left her in tears, and another person had to finish screening him. He wound up being banned for 6 months for his attitude, but he claims it was more than worth it. While this was going on, I had been reaching out to the various organisations and departments that oversaw plasma donation and collection, the FDA, OSHA, CDC, GHA, and the like. I informed them of the fact that we always cleaned prior to an inspection, but we didn't keep things clean day to day, and suggested a surprise inspection should be in order. I also handed over copies of everything I collected and tried to report, but always got shut down. I learned a few months later that all of the management and several of the other techs and supervisors were all, suddenly, reassigned, and the FDA, GHA and OSHA had all slammed fines on the centre for violations dating back almost the whole time I worked there. That's so incredibly messed up. Imagine just minding your own business, doing your job, and then when someone comes up and assaults you, and then the footage goes missing and you get fired an hour later? Surely that's a court case, right? Dad gets fired for BS reasons, plays the long game, ends up in charge, and takes the extended family on a cruise. That's a hell of a title. My dad had worked at the same company for almost 30 years before he was abruptly fired for complete bull. He was coordinating an upcoming meeting of people who had to fly in from around the country. One important participant resigned unexpectedly, so Dad cancelled the meeting via email and explained why. Apparently that counted as improperly communicating privileged information, and he was fired the next day. All this happened a week after Dad's boss retired and was placed by a new guy who wanted to cut costs. What a coincidence. This was about 10 years ago, near the height of the recession. Dad was in his 50s, hadn't interviewed for a job since the early 1980s. He wasn't sure he'd ever find another job. My mum went back to work at a school to pay the bills, while Dad scraped together what he could doing some crappy online consulting gigs for basically minimum wage. They managed to keep their heads above water, but only barely. Dad was out of work for a year and a half. He finally landed a job at a new company 3 states away. Coincidentally, about an hour away from where my wife and I lived and were expecting Dad's first grandchild. Mum and Dad moved to live about 20 minutes away from us. They had paid off the mortgage on their house, so they decided to keep it and rent it out, planning to retire there in a few years. New company treated Dad very well, better salary than he'd made at the old company, good benefits and respect from his co-workers and superiors. A year later, Mum and Dad were able to buy a second, smaller house near their grandkids. Dad mentioned a few things about his time at old company to his new bosses. Nothing confidential or anything, more like overall strengths and weaknesses. Of course, the story of how he got fired came out as well. It turns out that when you work at a company for over 25 years, you learn a thing or two about how it works, and cutting costs by firing experienced employees can make your company vulnerable. New companies started to get very interested. They saw an important business opportunity, and also a chance to get revenge on behalf of a valued employee. A couple years later, new company bought old company. They were both big companies, and mergers of this size take time. But when the dust settled, it was clear there were redundancies, divisions and products that both companies had that new company only needed one of. They kept as many of old company's people as they could, and very few lost their jobs. Except, of course, for the people responsible for firing Dad. New company put Dad in charge of the building he used to work at in old company, and let him choose his employees from both old and new companies. Dad had to move back to the old state, so new company helped sell his house in the new state and gave him a moving stipend of several $1,000s. But Mum and Dad were just moving back into their own house. They sold their new house that they'd made payments and improvements on for 5 years for a nice profit. With that money plus the moving stipend, they paid off debts, saved for retirement, and took me, my siblings, our spouses, and the grandkids on a cruise. Quick edit. Since people are asking, I never heard exactly what transpired when the guy who fired Dad got downsized, but since it's Christmas, I'm actually able to just ask him. Dad wouldn't say. Exit interviews are supposed to say private. I told him about this post, with all the names left out, and that people wanted to know. He just grinned and said, "That would be improperly communicating privileged information." Bully me mercilessly for being hard of hearing in a room full of people after I paid to be here? Have fun getting fired and evicted at the same time. I could get into huge trouble for posting this, but it's been a couple of years and nobody in my life knows that I use Reddit, so I think we're in the clear. I'm gonna take out any details that might give someone an idea of where or who I am though, just to be safe. TLDR, ride operator mocks me for being hard of hearing. I get him fired and evicted across the country from his hometown in the same day. Okay, so I'm not the type to ask for impossible crap or to demand ridiculous accommodations, and don't get me wrong, I'm usually very polite to service workers, but I will straight up go on full witch mode when I don't get what I'm paying for, and when workers are being purposely dismissive or rude. I do this weird sort of stern middle-aged mother witchy thing when I'm being dismissed at customer service, or when I have to deal with my boyfriend's bank, which will put him on hold for like 4 hours and treat him like absolute horse crap, until I get on the phone and suddenly they're all, "Yes ma'am, no ma'am, certainly ma'am, we can fix that right away ma'am." But there is exactly one instance where I've gone full Karen, entirely out of necessity. Ugh, I don't mean to judge anyone. And obviously I hope that this is a good revenge story, and obviously this person is hard of hearing and has been bullied. So I'm hoping that this does turn around, but this sounds like a kind of person who, they've said themselves, goes full witch mode. But to me, being on the other end of the phone and being a person who has worked for a bank before, whenever your girlfriend or spouse or whatever comes on the phone and starts screaming at me, that's the sort of vibes that I'm getting, is that this person will just shout until they get what they want. So I'm a bit apprehensive about the rest of the story because I'm not getting a good impression so far. But let's see where we go. That's my rant over anyway. So when I was 16, I paid over $150 for an all-day pass to get into a theme park event in my city that I go to every year. That's a lot of money to me, even now, but it's a huge deal and it's tradition. Problem is, The park is super loud, and I'm hard of hearing, auditory processing disorder, and a little deaf, so I have a hard time understanding what people are saying. The best way I can describe it is like it's sort of trying to hear somebody talk to you while you're underwater. If also while you were underwater there was a swarm of bees loudly buzzing around your head. This theme park is owned by a multi-billion-dollar company that pretty much runs the city, and they are widely known for being huge a-holes who just care about money. But the park is tradition, and everybody goes. Seriously, don't feel bad for them, they're terrible. My point is, the media in my city is literally scrabbling for a takedown story of this company. We were in the thick of it in the ride section, where things are noisiest, and I can't make out a friggin' thing. I'm walking into one of my favourite rides with my boyfriend, which takes place in an enclosed room, but you can still hear all the noise from outside, that I have gone on every year since I was like 6 years old. And the rules have changed as to where to put your bags. This is fine, if a little overkill, but I'm glad it's safer now. There are no signs signifying the rule change, so they are relying on you to understand the guy talking who doesn't sign. That's a big no-no for deaf and hard of hearing people, but with a little extra effort from the person trying to talk, you can get the gist of what's being said just fine. This 35-year-old man then decides to openly mock me, calling me a, sorry in advance, retard downy, for putting my bags where I've been putting them for the past decade. This whole thing lasts like 15 whole minutes, no exaggeration. He's going as far as to make other riders boo and clap at me as I desperately tried to figure out what was going on. I was confused and scared. My boyfriend, who can hear perfectly, was with me at the time, is trying to explain to me what this man wants, but even he can't understand because the instructions are so confusing, and he's purposely being cryptic to drag this out. The door is closed, and he won't let anybody leave until the ride was over, even when I was banging on the door trying to get out. I was literally crying at one point as people laughed at me, right up until I started signing and I realised I literally cannot understand. Straight silence across the ride, as nobody wants to get involved. Ride operator guy doesn't care, even when my boyfriend is telling him I can't hear him and to tell him clearly what he wants me to do so he can sign it to me. After that 15 minutes was up, finally some random citizen waves to get my attention and plays charades with me for 30 seconds before I 100% understood what was being asked of me and did it. To which this ride operator scoffs at this guy like he's pissed in his Diet Coke and starts to slow clap, while literally refusing to start the ride until everybody awkwardly slow claps with him. At this point everybody just wants this to be over and humours this guy while I'm still crying. The ride started and the entire time it was dead silent except for me sobbing. It was bad. People apologised to me outside and told me they were sorry for playing along and that they'd wish they'd have been the one to help me. Whatever. Anyway, I friggin' ruined that guy's life over the course of the next hour. It was like World War II at the customer service kiosk, which was near the entrance where it was quieter. I didn't need an interpreter, so I sent my boyfriend away to enjoy his day since mine was already shot. It was a hard sell. He was very protective after that whole fiasco, while I committed first-degree murder. The customer service lady tried to give me a voucher for half-price $30 ice cream and told me the guy was new and was just trying to do his job and that I should calm down. Oh? I did not pay $150 every year for a decade to be bullied for being legally deaf by some guy you brought on a week ago. I want your manager's manager on the phone right now, or so help me God. I made like 15 calls. I threatened a class action lawsuit. I literally called a family friend who's a lawyer right there at the customer service to show I was serious. I was pretty reasonable with anybody who wasn't acting like a class A dumbass. Called my local deaf and hard of hearing advocacy group. And the kicker? I called like 6 separate news channels. They were very interested in my story. This guy's boss came down to do damage control to tell me he was going to put the guy in suspension until the theme park moved to the next city in a couple of days. Not good enough. Who's your boss? I was out for blood. Once I'd reached literally as far up as I could go, some lady had to drive in from across the city to deal with me. The ride people's manager and the customer service people's manager were full-blown arguing about what to do as I began practicing what I was going to tell the news people when I got home. Apparently they would have to close the ride for like 4 hours while they got the only other guy who could operate it in from some event he was at. Maybe a wedding? I don't know. I wasn't listening. I didn't give a crap. Then I said something along the lines of, "It's not my fault you hired a discriminatory egghead who likes to pick on deaf teenage girls. I want him fired, and I want this crap on a record somewhere. I want consequences, and I want my frickin' ticket comped before I talk to highly respected state newspaper." They both turned to me at once, and it was like 2 owl bobbleheads looking at me. You're a minor? That man's ass was grass right then and there, and I was the friggin' lawnmower. He had sown the wind and I was the whirlwind. There was no saving him. Not only did they comp my ticket, they also gave both my boyfriend and I VIP passes and bought me lunch from any food stand in the theme park. Turns out the guy was actually living with the travelling theme park for the summer, sort of like a 21st century circus but with running water, in a park-owned trailer as they travelled across the country. I was unaware of this, but I'll be honest, it wasn't an unwelcome surprise. A security guard at my insistence led me to the edge of the closed-off trailer area where I watched him pack his crap into a backpack and a box, leaving what he couldn't carry, presumably to be picked up later or thrown out, before he was led by 2 separate security guards out the back, basically evicted and fired in one solid punch. I don't know where he went, but I highly doubt he had a place to crash in the city. The park then, hilariously, called my 50-year-old redneck dad to ask if the punishment and compensation for me was to his satisfaction and if he would be pressing charges or speak to anybody about the incident. They meant the news. And he basically just said, "Yeah, that's fine. What direction did he go in?" What a goof. They wouldn't tell him. Eventually he got me on the phone and asked if I wanted to press charges against the park or if I would want to speak to anybody. No, I'm alright. I'd like a comp lunch from my boyfriend who was with me when it happened though, if that's alright. That way we can eat together. My dad laughed and told him what I wanted, and that was that. They had me sign some paperwork that basically prohibited me from talking to the news or posting about it on social media, and a customer service dude went, found my boyfriend, and led him to where I was waiting with 2 VIP lanyards and eating. I had already ordered. OP, what did you do? I ordered us a bloomin' onion, a plate of deep fried pickles, a plate of deep fried Oreos because I know you wanted to try them. Also, we have 2 VIP tickets now and another $150 to spend. Oh, and 2 sodas. We're still dating and go to the theme park every year. Nobody has bothered me about my hearing since. Okay, I feel a bit better about how this post started now. That guy was a total ass bag and deserved to lose his job at the very least. There's no need to publicly humiliate anyone for any reason ever and then try and get other people to join in. It's messed up like. Okay, so that's all for r/ProRevenge. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!